Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Open Cheese, the post-game show of the Green Bay Packers for the Open Network. I am Iowa Joe. That is Cheese Talk Brian Rago. This is not as happy of a post-game show as we've had. Uh, Obviously, the news is the Packers lost to the Cleveland Browns 13-10, and some last-minute, last-quarter shenanigans. Brian, what are your initial thoughts of today's shit show?
You can't keep it. You can't keep it that close. You can't be so predictive on what you do on offense. I mean, you lost Jaden Reed, but you still have other weapons you can use. It just seemed like the play calling is too predictable. And I mean, you had them 10-0 until the last half of the fourth quarter, and you just pretty much threw the game away, literally.
Right. I mean, I got to give the Browns defense a lot of credit. They have a lot of playmakers over there. Mike and I were talking about it in our preview show that was going to be the thing that was going to be the real challenge going into this game was the defensive side of the ball, and they came in with their A game. They got to Jordan several times. I do have stats, so let me pull that up real quick. Um, he got sacked 5 times, so they got to him 5
Yeah.
times. So that's not great. And of course, the Packers came in with a weak offensive line because they were missing. Well, they started with their starters, but after like the first play, they lost Tom, which I said this on a couple of the social medias that there is no reason Tom should even have tried. There were huge question marks. He said he wasn't feeling great, and he was in doubts to even play. He himself said he was in doubts to even play today, and there should have been no reason for him to start that game. Throw somebody else in there. I know it's not ideal because the person taking over is going to be looking dead in the eye of Myles Garrett, but
Who does
you
that
can't.
fall on?
What's that?
Who does that fall on? Who's responsible for letting him go up there?
I think it's a mixture of 3 different peoples. I think 1, it's Zach Tom. I think 2, it's the medical, and 3, it's LaFleur. Because Zach Tom is a man. If he says, "Hey, I can't go," I can't go. But if he's telling people, "Yeah, I can try it," then some of the blame lays square on him. Same thing with the medical. If medical thought that there was no way in hell that he was going to be able to play, they should have said something. And then, of course, LaFleur is the same way. If he didn't think Tom was going to be at 100%, there should have been no reason for him to even try it, and said, "No, Zach, you're sitting down. We'll put Kennard in there, or we'll put Morgan in there, or we'll put Belton in there, or whoever they were going to put in there." There should have been no option given if he was that bad. And obviously he was that bad because after the first play he was done.
Right.
So things didn't really start picking up until late second quarter. It was uh, what was it? They got a field goal, and then they finally did score a touchdown. No, the field goal was it. It was 3-0 at halftime.
Yep.
So, obviously nobody wants to play or have a baseball score game, but what do you do? At least the Packers were ahead. The defense was holding up their end of things. They did come out later in the game, later mid third quarter, and put up a touchdown finally. Uh, so you know, to John Fitzpatrick getting his first touchdown of his career. I've never really been a huge fan of Fitzpatrick because I didn't think he was. I don't know. I didn't think he was much over Ben Sims, but hey, he had a decent game today and got his first touchdown of the season. So 10-0 going into the fourth quarter. You couldn't ask for more, could you, Brian?
No, and I just think the last, they're trading punts back and forth, and towards the end there, they had him held in the goal line or in the red zone, and stupid penalties. We kept on getting penalties on third. You'd hold them on third down, flag. Hold them on third down, flag. It's just at what point you got discipline has to come into play here, and there got to be this. It just, I mean, ultimately the flags lost us the game.
They did, but I also have to blame that a lot on the refs too. And it's one of those things that they were starting to get really ticky tacky. I mean, even the announcers were kind of calling that out. That what was it on the was it Bullard got flagged for
Yep.
pass interference, and they said there should never been pass interference called. There were a couple other calls that even the announcers are sitting there saying that shouldn't have been called. But here's the penalty breakdown. Penalties for the Packers were 14 for 75 yards. Penalties for the Browns was 8 for 90 yards. So while the Packers were able to walk away with more yardage out of the penalties, they were flagged almost double what the Browns were. And again, a lot of those penalties, you have to wonder what the hell they were calling. What the hell this ref squad was looking on out there, because the there wasn't much to them to be called. But and then you got some that weren't called. Again, Michael Parsons, Micah Parsons was routinely getting grabbed, shoved, all these things that could have easily been flagged and they weren't. But again, the defense did what it could. I think what it was more than anything was the defense was just running out of energy. They were getting thrown into the onto the field way too often, and the energy just wasn't there for them towards the end of the game.
Yeah, it was frustrating. Just when you thought you had him stopped, and all of a sudden you got, oh, there's a flag on the play. It's like, God damn it, it's like just. I mean, I even saw a couple plays where Parsons is coming around the edge, and you see a whole handful of jersey being pulled, and it's like, that's a hold. That's a hold. Where's the flag at?
Yeah.
But
Well, and there was one in the end zone that I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but they got grabbed, and Moose Johnson is sitting. That's holding, and it could have easily been a touchdown for the Packers, but it wasn't because of the disruption from the defensive back, and that hurts too. So I again, I don't know what was going on with this ref crew, but I kept throwing the gif up there of clowns pulling the endless handkerchiefs out of their pocket, because that's
yeah,
basically what was going on. Was they just kept throwing, kept throwing, kept throwing. It's like, okay, whatever, you do you. I get. Who was it that made the comment on, was it Twitter, that what are the refs doing getting paid by the flag?
yeah, yeah. No, I mean you can blame the. I mean, yeah, maybe the refs had a part to do with it, because obviously every game there's takeaways from both sides. Well, this should have been called. That should have been called. But at the end of the game, you know, you look at us the last 2 weeks. We're all this Micah Parsons. Well, he's going to make everybody else in this team better. Well, you got Myles Garrett for the Browns, who has the same effect that Micah Parsons has with his team. Were we focusing too much on Myles Garrett that we're forgetting about the other guys that come on defense? So I mean, it's a mind game for sure, and they won today, obviously. So
Right, and I'm not one to put all the blame on the refs. It's just it was sickening for their thing, but right, they for some reason the Packers didn't come out with the same. This was a completely different team than what came out the first 2 weeks of the season. They just looked lost out there. Not the defense, the offensive side of the ball. Hafley had these guys prepared for the most part up until, like I said, the last half of the fourth quarter where the Browns started coming back. And again, I think they were just getting gassed. It was another warmish day. They were getting put in a position they were having to play constantly because the offense just wasn't having extended drives. I'll be honest, it reminded me of Hawkeye football again. And it sucks when I got to see two of my teams do the same shit, every weekend. And, uh, but yeah, it's something else. I don't know if LaFleur just gets scared, because I know they were joking with the commentaries that LaFleur was talking about how he has two sections of his call sheet. One section is when when Miles Garrett's on the field, and the other section is when he's off the field. And it's like, you can't do that. You were having some success with certain play calls, no matter who was on the field. Stick with it.
Right. I mean, look. So you look at that perspective. Does he have two playbooks against the Lions too? One when Hutch is in there, one when he isn't. And look how he played against the Lions. I mean, it makes no sense.
I'm sure he does in a sense. Maybe
Right.
not so much as a Miles Garrett, but because really with the Lions, they don't have much opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. So it's a lot easier to scheme against Hutchinson. But like Mike and I were talking in the preview, the Browns have more than just Miles Garrett. They have
Right.
a whole disruption there. So yeah, and one play they had three different people covering Miles Garrett. They had a tight end, they had the right tackle, and they had Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
And that opened up a whole field for the rest of the defense to come in and nab Jordan. Now on to a little bit more with that, Jordan was making some piss poor decisions. The interception was horrible. There were a couple of times that he should have just thrown the ball away, but he took the sack on him. I think Andy Herman was trying to justify not throwing it away and taking the sack, but it's like he's outside the pocket. He could easily throw that ball out of bounds. Just do it, and you have a more manageable downage to go. But like I said, this offense just was not anywhere near what they were the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah. Do you think they're overlooking the Browns and kind of had Dallas in sight?
No, I can't say that, just because maybe defensive side that you could say that, but with the way the Browns defense has been this year and even into from last year, there's no way they could have easily overlooked them, because there is the Wrecker and Miles Garrett. They have two solid cornerbacks out there, and in Ward and Newsome. They have a good safety in Delpit. They have more than just Miles Garrett on that front seven. So the only part of it that they may not have been great at is the linebackers, because they're young and inexperienced, but they have playmakers at those positions too. So yeah, there's I don't see how. I mean, I honestly I can't answer that question because I'm not in those rooms. But in my mind, I don't see how they could have overlooked the Browns. And yeah,
Yeah. It just felt like a weird game, like all game long. It just felt like this is like a trap game, and I don't think I don't have a good feeling about this.
right. Part of me wants to make the excuse that maybe they were just too gassed from the too hard hitting games in the first 2 weeks of the season, but that's just copium going on there.
Yeah.
So
I
we
like I'd rather a game like this early on versus usually when it happens, it's in the playoffs. So I'd
right.
rather have it happen right now than you know 18 weeks from
This is
now.
one of those things, like Mike and I were like I kind of put up to Mike on the preview, that it makes you wonder if LaFleur has in his mind that you can only score a certain amount of points in a season. Because like you're only gifted 600 points in a season, and you can't go over that 600 point mark. So, is he saving those points for later in the season when he may need them? But So we've talked about the offense. The defense, outside of that last half of the quarter, played well. Special teams, I was going to rave about special teams up until that blocked kick. And that's because they were, the Celtic Cannon. Dan Whelan was booming when he needed to. He was placing the ball well. The Gunners were getting where they needed to be. They weren't giving up a ton of yardage on any kind of returns. So, I thought they were doing well. And then you get to that last kick and it gets blocked, and they're damn lucky it wasn't returned for a touchdown. Now, I don't know if that,
Yeah.
well, no, that wouldn't help because there was still a little time left on the clock, but they're damn lucky it didn't end in a touchdown because of the way they were positioned and because Delpit made a hell of a fucking play on that ball and was put himself in the right position. So outside of that, what did you think of special teams? Did you freeze? I think Brian froze. Yeah, Joe, I can't do a Wisconsin accent very well, so I can't.
And the foreshadowing, like, well, on the first on the on the blocked field goal, it barely got off, but McManus was able to make it, and it's like, yep, they're gonna block it. They're gonna block it, and sure enough, it was blocked. I mean, you just got to tighten that up. I mean, that's something that should be pretty simple. Is just block for a couple of seconds and let the ball get kicked. But I mean, costed us the game, I thought.
And the guy that got beat uh on that block was Jordan Morgan. I mean, there was more than one guy that got in there, but Morgan is one of the main guys that I saw in there that got beat on that one. But yeah, I don't know what else they could have really done to protect themselves on that, but they got to shore up their blocking a little bit more. Uh, is there any good that we can talk about in this game?
Um, I still think Savion Williams is, I think, starting to shine a little bit. Golden had didn't he have a 34-yard catch or
Yep, he had a long of 34, 4 receptions on 4 targets for 52 yards with a long of 34.
yeah, so that's not bad. I mean, um, Josh Jacobs had not a decent outing. He had like 29 yards rushing, I think.
30.
So it's yeah. So I mean, I don't really know. I mean, the defense. I mean, for the most part, the defense played well. It wasn't their fault. They didn't throw the interception. They didn't. They didn't let the guy get through the block the field goal. I mean, I still, you know, once there's a few plays where there's like a wide open catch, but there was quick swarm to the ball carrier, to the receiver by Quay Walker, McDuffie, Micah, and all those guys. But they just got to pull it together as a whole and come out and take this loss and learn and improve from it and just use it as an example as motivation.
I have to honestly say, had there been any other quarterback or a younger version of Joe Flacco out there instead of old man Flacco, this game would have been a lot different because, yeah, there were some guys that were left wide open. That one weird flea flicker
Yeah.
that they tried to run, they had Isaiah Bond like wide open over the middle of the field. If Flacco would have saw that in his prime, he'd have hit that every time, and this game would have been a lot different. But yet for some reason on that flea flicker, they dumped it off to the running back and it didn't really go anywhere. But that's more on them than it is on the Packers for anything like that. But yeah, I mean, Savion looked really well in the return game, and I have to say that when the Packers drafted him, that's what I envisioned for him to start out with, was to be more of a return guy, and that's why I always question the signing of McCole Hardman. And now I know he's on the practice squad; he's not on the active. But when they initially announced the signing of McCole, it was because he was going to be the primary return guy. And then they drafted Savion Williams, and it's like, well, now you don't need McCole Hardman because you got this guy that can do the same thing on a rookie contract. So it's weird, but he really did. He put up some decent numbers. I had him here for a minute. Let me get back to him. Uh, he had 3 returns for 78 yards with a 35-yard long, and I think the 35-yard long one was there towards the end where he was like pushing the scrum and gaining as many yards as he could. They tried the wildcat thing with him again, and it didn't work as well as it did the last time. But I think that's something that they can keep in the playbook, and eventually when they get their offensive line settled, they'll be able to run that a little bit more efficiently. But yeah, Golden looked great. Even he had some end arounds on that he looked solid in. I made the comment on socials that even though those plays didn't amount to more than what they did, you could still see the vision, you could still see the talent and the ability that he can have on those plays.
Right. Yeah, it's just, you know, I think, like I said, I think he's starting to come on. I think he's gonna, have some impact later on in the season. Just as an overall shit game. I mean, from start to finish, pretty much. I mean, it's kind of boring. Nothing at halftime, not a lot of excitement. Hard hitting football. We lost Javon Bullard. What did they say, to a concussion? We lost Banks to a groin. So I mean, but
Well,
it's
Banks went
nice
into
to
the game
see.
with a groin.
Yeah, but I mean, it's nice to see like Nate Hobbs playing well. Nixon.
The internet monster's hitting Brian.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, they've got to definitely clean up a lot of stuff before the Dallas game.
Breaking up. Sorry.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
like
I mean, Dallas is getting beat by Chicago right now, 24-14 at halftime.
huh. Yeah, I don't have the gumption to want to watch any more football after the Packers Browns game, so I might check the scores on that a little bit, but I'm definitely not going to watch it. But I think we'll wrap up here because there's not much more that we can really go over with it. I think we've hit the points. Of course, these will be talking points that we'll have with the review that Mike and I'll do, and I'm sure you'll be talking to some people during the week about it. Do you got any final thoughts that you want to put out there?
No, I just think that the Packers need to come out with more discipline and, I mean, go back to the basics. I mean, it's, reset and try to improve, I guess.
Sounds good to me. All right, guys. I am Iowa Joe. That's Cheese Talk Pod. Brian Rago. You can find us anywhere that you get your favorite podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, all them good places. You can follow us on all social medias, Twitter, Elon Machine, whatever you want to call it, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. Please do go over and follow us on Facebook. That way we can start doing some broadcasts over on Facebook. Go over and check out our new merch store. Don DeKisto and I have been redesigning some of our merch ideas. We're putting them out. We're over on Fourth Wall. A little bit easier for me to manage than what we had before. You can get there a couple different ways. I'll put the links out on socials, but If you just go over to ohanapackers.org and click on the store button, that'll take you right to it. Our newest addition to the merch store is the Tuckercraft Burn Down Their Childhood Home t-shirt. It's a design that I've been trying to get done for the last year and a half, or since whenever he was quoted with that. Uh, it looks great. You can get it on a couple different colored t-shirts. Go over, get a shirt, make the purchase, help support the podcast. Also, please, drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Help us spread the word. Help us get known a little bit more, so we can talk about the stuff you want to hear about with the people you want to hear about. As Mike would say, go pack go and aloha.